Welcome back everyone to Opimation, the fitness animator, and in today's video we're going to go over something I came across on the internet, and there's a book for this too. It's the 22 Rules of Storytelling by Pixar. So I just printed this out, and I normally just have it up on my wall just to remind me. But I thought, you know what, these rules are quite important, and it's good to get a little recap on them. So without further ado, I found this website where it tells you, breaks it down. I'll put a link in the description of each rule. So we'll go over them, and then, you know, there's some examples I can give of some of them. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory, but some examples that I can give, I will give, and we'll just go through each rule and just see how it can relate to what we do in our work. So without further ado, before we start, just hit that like and subscribe button. It's helping my channel grow. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, let's dive straight into this. So let's get into rule number 1. You admire a character more for trying than for their successes. So this rule is really cool. From this website, the example they've given here is like, as an audience, we love to see our favorite characters achieve their goals. It's what we hope for throughout the film. However, it isn't their winning that makes us love them so much. Instead, it is that they try in the first place, and they keep trying even when the odds are stacked against them. So this is more of like, I guess you could say, the underdog, right? We're all rooting for the underdog, because in the world there's more underdogs than people that are successful. So I guess the majority of people can relate to that. So that's always a good thing, where your character's trying. You may give up, but it gives that empathy to yourself, because you've been in situations where you've tried and I guess you've failed as well. So you can kind of relate to that more. As they say, you know, you fail more than you succeed. All right, guys, let's move on to rule number 2, which is you've got to keep in mind what's interesting to you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer. The two can be very different. And this is the way I can relate to this. I mean, if we check the rule out, what's written in here, it says, for example, you might have a great heart-wrenching scene at the end of your screenplay, but it might also require killing off a much beloved character. You might think that this will tug at the viewer's heartstrings, and it might, but it also might just anger your audience. So it doesn't matter, whatever emotion you're getting out of your audience, you know, that's what counts too. You want that anger, emotional anger, you want crying, whatever. So even though you might be attached to a character, I guess what they're saying is, if you're quite attached to a character, just sometimes you got to let certain characters go for your story to grow. Another example he gives it, or maybe you have a cleverly written moment full of groundbreaking techniques, but one that would also be about 5 minutes long and would only disengage your viewers. So as much as we are writing screenplays because we enjoy it, and I've got an example of this which I'll give you, we are also too often looking to engage an audience. This can't really be done if we are too busy writing scenes for our own self-interest and focusing too much on the ingenuity of what's on the page. I can relate to this when I was being too overambitious about my final project at university. You know, sometimes as students we fall victim to this. We get too overambitious. We want to try this, we want to try that. We want to do it because we like it. We're not thinking about our audience. We have to think about what the audience will empathize with. That you have to get that empathy out of the audience. So one example would be, I guess, seeing someone in a particular position of struggle and putting that into your work, so the audience can feel that, oh, I know what that character is going through, rather than, you know, just doing it for the sake of it. So that's one example I can give. So rule number 3 is trying for the theme is important. However, you won't see what the story is about until you're at the end of the story. Got it? Now rewrite. So let's check out what's written on this one. This rule gets the idea that writing process is often what leads you to truly understand what the story is about. You might have an idea or what you are trying to write about. However, you probably won't fully realize what you are trying to say until you've written the story out in its actualities. There you will see all the kinks and contours of the theme you're seeking to express. Furthermore, this rule highlights that the rewriting process is inherent to good writing. The first draft will never be completed version. This is what writers normally say. And it was when you get to the 8th draft, right? So you're just basically word vomiting out all your ideas. Instead, the first draft is a ground to build from. That's very true as well. You know, a lot of the writers say this is in order to truly realize the best version of your story, ironing out different versions will be necessary. So they've given, it's true that does make sense. And that's the same for even animation. You know, when you're planning your animation work out, you're getting all these resources, all these drafts, you're putting together your references, then you're animating. And sometimes, you know, it's happened to me many times, I have to scrap the whole animation and do it again. So you'll keep layering on different ideas, and eventually you get to your 5th draft Sometimes you do it first time. There is a first take as well. Some people say, in jazz it talks about it's never as good as the first take because you're improvising, you got that feeling, you're doing it. When you keep on doing those takes, the feeling goes. But I guess with animation it's different because you can bring in all this reference and you can really plan and see if it works. If it doesn't, you can try second, third draft, if you want to say it like that. All right, guys, so let's move on to the fourth rule. Pixar's fourth rule is once upon a time, there was something, every day something happened, one day something, because of that, something, because of that, something, until Friday, right? So you can make your own story structure. So story structure is especially important in screenwriting, and it is often what scripts readers look for when searching for great writing. This Pixar storytelling rule shows a model that is simple but effective. Take Toy Story, for example. The classic tale follows the model to a T, right? So what did I say about storytelling here for Toy? So what they say here is once upon a time there was a boy, Andy. Every day he played with his favorite toy, Woody. One day, Andy gets a new toy, Buzz Lightyear. Because of that, Woody was no longer Andy's favorite toy. Because of that, Woody attempts to get rid of Buzz until finally they become friends. So that's a model, nice little sample there, right? Obviously, this is an oversimplified version of the film, but it still lays out the story into its essential beats. So you've got that kind of, I guess, in screenplay and stuff, you have a treatment, right? This is a very short treatment, but it's like a one page, which gives you a little gist of the whole film. So in a sentence, this is basically what the film is about. And then you can expand from that. It says there, so having a basic structure like this can be a great place to start. Agreed, yeah. It provides clarity on who the protagonist is going to be, what the main conflict is, and where you want them to end up. So you've got a start, middle, and end in it. Then you can begin to fill in the details, which Pixar are so good at doing, right? And you've got so many other great film companies out there, Sony, Blue Sky, which is gone now, but DreamWorks and what have you, a lot of independent studios too, right? So Pixar's rule number 5, simplify, focus, hop on detours. You'll feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it sets you free. So it says there, one of the difficulties of screenwriting is ensuring your plot does not come too convoluted. Sometimes it is important to step back and take a look at the bigger picture. Again, animation, same thing, right? You're animating, looking back, take a day off, come back, get fresh eyes, have a look, feedback, improve your work. Is it really necessary to have a specific scene? Again, stepping back, having a look. Is it really necessary to have that particular animation? Do we need it? There's a reason for it. Or are we just putting it in because it's moving? Is there a reason? Is the character thinking? And then he goes on to say, what you have written might be great, but if a script becomes too complicated, it could take away from the story you are trying to tell. True. So you always got to make sure you don't go off on a tangent. One way to apply this Pixar storytelling rule is to write the screenplay as you first imagine it, detours and all, and then go back. If deleting a scene doesn't harm the plot in any way, get rid of it. The more focused your screenwriting, the better. Exactly, to the point. Relating it back to animation, thought process. Is the character thinking? What is it thinking? Okay, is it doing the action? Okay, what's the reaction of the other character or the character itself, which animation is, right? Acting and reacting when it comes to obviously the performance side of it. A question you could ask yourself, so let's move on to what it says after that. So deleting a scene is always better. The rule teaches us that complicated plot lines aren't necessary to write a great story. It also teaches us that it is important to see the bigger picture when writing a screenplay. A question you could ask yourself is, what is the worst that could happen if this scene was deleted? Would it change the main narrative arc? Answering this question will allow you to see whether the scene is important or unnecessary. So asking those questions, again, to your animations as well. A very good exercise. Now that I read it out and I'm doing this video, it's making a lot more sense to me. I guess it's all the mistakes I've done through all the years, that's why. But anyway, Pixar's rule number 6. What's your character good at, most comfortable with? Throw the polar opposite to them, challenge them, how do they deal with it? So the 6th Pixar storytelling rule was to say it could be valuable for developing your character arc. So let's check Pete Docter's Up. This is an example. Great film. After the death of his wife, Carl has created a comfortable routine for himself. He is alone, he doesn't take any risks. He thinks he is happy that way until Russell comes along, right? The little kid. The Russell, his polar opposite, young, adventurous, excitable. It makes so much sense when you read it. It's so simple. Russell challenges Carl out of his comfort zone, which is so true to life as well. When you're working at a company for so long and, I've been victim to this as well. And then you're like, I should have left ages ago. You just get into your comfort zone, isn't it? And also your work. You don't challenge your animation work. So I do that. Creature animation. So I do this. And, you just jump in and do it. You just challenge yourself. So Carl has many ups and downs, but eventually he learns the importance of having other people in his life. Russell has challenged him at the end, and he's become a happier person. Putting your character in a situation that is completely unfamiliar to them causes a huge amount of character development, which is really good. This gives you the opportunity, doesn't it, to expand on your character. This is because the character is forced to adapt a new change or a new way of life, if you like, to come out on the other side. That's probably one of my favorite rules at the moment. Now I'm reading it to you. It typically creates conflict as the characters bump against each other. We get that a lot in work as well, personality conflicts and stuff like that. So, and then ultimately at the end, you come to a satisfying resolution. So I like that rule. Nice rule, man. So Pixar's rule number 7, come up with your ending before you figure out your middle. And seriously, endings are hard. Get yours working up front. I don't know whether this is just, I remember reading a book by Walter Murch, In a Blink of an Eye, editing, and he said the same thing. But he also mentioned that for American cinema goers, they want to know about that, the strong end. I don't know, sometimes cliffhangers are, in other cultures or what have you, cliffhangers might be nice, but I remember him saying that in one of his interviews on YouTube. Check him out, Walter Murch. I'll leave a link in the description for his book, In a Blink of an Eye. Very good book for editing. But let's check this out. So the ending, right? Working out your ending first gives your characters a direction, something they are working towards even when neither they nor the audience knows yet. This can make your middle much more powerful because you can use the ending to build a more tension-filled plot. Yeah, I guess working backwards, isn't it? You're building up. So you've got a solid, what's going to happen at the end. A character's going to go off into the sunset, I don't know, die, 2 people, they become best mates, whatever, there's a sequel. So there's always something there. So let's read this about if you don't know your ending. If you don't know your ending, the rest of the story could lack the attention to detail it could have had if you had known everything that was going to happen. Attention to detail makes the story world more believable and cohesive. Moreover, it leads to a sense of that everything in the story is meaningful. It can be fun to go with the flow, but be careful planning often to key a more cohesive screenplay. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. So let's move on to the other one. So Pixar's rule number 8, finish your story. Let go if it isn't perfect. In an ideal world, you have both, but move on. Do better next time. This is, again, man, relates so much to animation. You're working on the show, it's just not working. You're like, it's fine, man. You learned from it, you practiced, move on. Next one, right? So writing screenplays is a learning process. Doing animation is a learning process. Everything, right? You are constantly developing your skills and learning from mistakes. Sometimes it can be disappointing when your great story idea doesn't make it to an excellent screenplay. You know what? This happened the same to me as animation. I did an animation when I was working at Lego. Everyone liked it. It was really good. But for some reason, it just didn't make it in the game, or because it was something to do with memory or something like that. It was a cutscene. It was really big. But yeah, it was a shame. I used it on my show reel though, but it never really made it. You get that. That happens. And then it says, well, I'm always saying it. Sometimes it can be disappointing, when your great story doesn't make it to a screenplay that you thought it would. But if you are truly passionate about it, keep writing the story. Perhaps after you reach the end, you'll be able to see it from a new perspective and you can improve on it. If not, don't worry, just move on. A lot of writers make mistakes and cling on to one screenplay. They believe it's going to be huge, but it doesn't always work out that way. Yeah, I get that, man. The best thing to do is finish a screenplay, and if it isn't what you thought it would be, don't let it discourage you, move on. Yeah, same thing with animation, same thing with getting a job. Companies will reject you. Don't let it dishearten you. Just keep moving forward. Yeah, keep going forward. A lot of the most, it's nice to see that it says that, even the most successful screenwriters have losses. Not all screenplays can be a hit. Some of them make it, some of them won't. Like you say, you fail more times than you succeed. Okay, rule number 9. When you're stuck, make a list of what would and wouldn't happen next. Material to get unstuck will show up. So when you start dissecting your story by writing these notes, it's the same, again, as animation. When you've done an animation and you go through it, you write notes. You're going through it again, see what's happening. Oh, the hips could be like this. Oh, that pose could be a bit stronger. Oh, the landing is a bit soft. So you're always writing, refining, dissecting until finally getting fresh eyes. And then finally, you got a perfect, not perfect, but no shot's perfect, but as good as you can get at that particular time. So let's delve more into this. This is a storytelling rule that encourages you to try out an exercise. Writer's block is the worst, and when it happens, we tend to make it worse by overthinking. Just taking a moment to, Graham Hancock, I've got a quote here from Graham Hancock. He thinks writer's block is idle laziness. He doesn't believe in it, but he's written a lot of books, so he's just keep going, I guess he keeps saying. So he says, take a moment just to relax and come up with every possible scenario. While on the occasion, ideas might just come to you without any promoting at all, sometimes we fear we will never have a good idea. There are so many possibilities to story, you might just need to unlock them. Writing a list can be a perfect way to find the right direction in your screenplay. And also, like, we can talk about spider diagrams, right? Just branching out more. It's all in the head. Sometimes you just need to experiment and dig a little. Yes, I agree with that. So rule number 10, pull apart the stories you like. What you like in them is a part of you. You've got to recognize it before you can use it. That's true, because then you can relate to it more. You're putting your own truth into the work. No material is original, and this Pixar storytelling rule provides that nothing comes from nothing. After all, we are often inspired by other stories and artists. Yeah, Austin Kleon, Still Like an Artist. I'll put a link in the description for that. Books. Keep going, and what's the other one? Show Your Work. So great books. Pixar. So what does it say? If you examine those stories more closely, you will find what it really is that attracted you to them in the first place. Recognizing what you found inspiring about your favorite stories, whether they are books, films, or song lyrics, could help you emulate messages they carry in your own screenplays. Pixar have done this with many of their own films. For example, Bond movies, comic books, Incredibles, Mouse Hunt, whilst Mouse Hunt influenced Ratatouille. There you go. Enough said on that rule. Pixar number 11 rule. Putting it on paper lets you start fixing it. If it stays in your head, a perfect idea, you'll never share it with anyone. This is true. You know what? I saw an interview on Stephen King, and the interviewer asked Stephen King, and it's always stuck with me. And he said, how do you know you got a good idea? He said, when it keeps replaying in your head over and over again. And I'm working on a project at the moment that's been playing in my head for the last, I would say 10 years. Finally, I'm doing it. I'm going to get the video out soon. It's a little animation I'm doing. So look out for that. But at the moment, I'm still working on it. Hopefully by end of October, I'll get it out. And we'll see how that does. But anyway, it just kept replaying in my head, the idea. And when I heard Stephen King say that, I was like, all right, I need to do this because it's playing in my head. It might be right, it might be wrong, I don't know. Like the screenplay, it might work, it might not, but you got to give it a chance, right? So we go back to this rule number 11, putting it on paper lets you start fixing it, right? So you got to see, when you write it down, you got to see it. And it says that if you put it on paper, however, what was once in your imagination becomes real. It is now a possibility that something that you can share with others. Making a career out screenwriter means you have to have a real tangible evidence of your talent. That way to do this is just to write. The way to do this is just to write. So that's pretty cool. I like that one, writing down. I do write down my tasks and everything, what I want to do for the week. So I agree with that. Pixar's rule number 12, discount the first idea that comes to your mind, and the second and the third and the fourth, get obvious ones out of the way, surprise yourself. Yeah, you know what? I will relate this to when you're animating, you might get an idea, do the cliche thing, right? But really, you want to keep working on your ideas and getting them more original. One thing my mentor told me about was to go out, which I explain a lot in my courses, to go out, experience life, put that into your work. That will make your work original. So that's one thing you can do. Pixar's rule number 13, give your characters opinions. Passive, malleable, might seem likable as you write, but it's poison to the audience. Yeah, the audience wants to see different types of characters, right? Because that's where the story stays interesting, and you've got a bit of conflict, humor, seriousness, anger. And they've got an example here. So let's check out the example. For example, in Toy Story, Woody and Buzz have not so desirable character traits. Woody sometimes acts out of his own interest, and Buzz has a sizable ego. Right, you can see that conflict. In the end, though, they still root for them. Yeah, it's like the anti-hero, right? We look at TV shows like Sopranos and Tony Soprano, and you're rooting for him. You know he's doing bad things, but you're rooting for him. Woody takes care of his friends, has some great one-liners, and truly loves Andy. Buzz's ignorance, meanwhile, can be endearing and brave along with his dramatic tendencies. I get that. So that's a cool one as well. So guys, Pixar's rule number 14, why must you tell this story? What's the belief burning within you that this story feeds off? That's the heart of it. So what's really in there? Right, so let's check this out. Write what you know. Okay, you probably heard of the phrase millions of times. However, this piece of advice is often misconstrued, as it is easy to see why. After all, it's doubtful that Steven Spielberg had quite such a close encounter with a great white shark before writing Jaws, right? Okay, so yeah, this is more, again, going back to animation, you got to put something in there that feeds the audience. And for you, it's an experience you've had. So it could be anything. It could be when you're young, your teacher might have said something, parents, there's some kind of trauma that you're dealing with that you want to get out through your art. So why is it important to you? why do you want to get it out there? You got to ask yourself these questions. Pixar, what they're saying is, if you can identify that belief, right, you can use it to develop your screenplay. So whatever that is you want to show, this belief will give your story meaning and purpose. Most importantly, it will have part of you within it. That's true. You want to put a truth in you, within yourself, in your story, in your characters, in your animation. That what makes a difference. Every artist has an element of truth in their work. That's why people relate to it so much. Pixar rule number 5, if you were your character in this situation, how would you feel? Honestly lends credibility to unbelievable situations. That's true as well, that speaks for itself. So, in a fight, being attacked, whatever, man, you know how you feel, right? Or have you helped someone that needed your help in a time of need? All these things. Pixar's rule number 16, what are the stakes? Give us a reason to root for your character. What happens if they don't succeed? Stack the odds against them. Let's have a look at this. Great screenplays tend to have a great villain, yeah? And the villain is usually stronger than the protagonist. This is what makes them unpredictable. Pixar uses this rule in most of their movies, but one of the times it's at its most effective is in the film Brave. So let's check that Brave. So this is an example. In the film, Merida doesn't succeed, her mother will remain a bear. Oh, if she doesn't succeed, the mother will remain a bear. So Merida and her mother, Eleanor, have broken their relationship that can only be properly fixed once Eleanor is a human again. Yeah, however, this tension is built and she is only able to save her mother at the last minute. The odds are truly stacked against her. There you go. That's a good example, isn't it? Rule number 17 is no work is ever wasted. If it doesn't work, let go and move on. It'll come back around and be useful later. This is really good. Was it Chuck Berry? Was his the drawer, the artist, the animator? He said, draw for 500,000 drawings. Now draw another 500,000. So you're not wasting nothing. You're always learning. You're learning how not to do something as well as how to do something. So that's really good too. We learn from your mistakes. So nothing is wasted really. Even the experiences you have at work, they're all adding up to something that you can better yourself with and have some kind of self-improvement. So I agree with that rule. That's a good rule. Okay, so rule number 18, you have to know yourself. The difference between being yourself and fussy. Story is testing, not refining. So what does it say? What does Pixar say about it? When writing a screenplay, there will be elements we wish could have gone better. But once you have written the best version, there's no point fussing over it or constantly rewriting. That way, the script will never be finished. That's true. Just like animation, you have to come to, one of our mentors said, there comes a time where you have to divorce the shot and move on. You just have to move on. There's no shot that is completely polished, How do you know it's completely polished? For example, when you've got a lot of great directors and animators around you and they look at your work and they're all saying, yeah, it looks done to me, it's done, final, polished. That's when you kind of know. When you're with all that excellence around you and they have kind of accepted your shot is final, you can kind of say, 3 or 4 people who are that good at directing have said, it's final. They're happy with it. It's always subjective, I know that, but that's when you can kind of move on, divorce your shot, right? Because there's never no end to polishing. You just keep on refining, isn't it? Okay, so rule number 19, coincidences to get characters into trouble are great. Coincidences to get them out of trouble are cheating. Okay, let's cheat this out. For example, in Toy Story, there are a series of unfortunate events that lead to toys getting lost. In the first movie, Woody accidentally leans on an object that knocks over the bunch of objects that knocks Buzz outside the window onto Sid's lawn. In the second movie, Woody gets broken, meaning he can't go to cowboy camp with Andy. He is put on a shelf and finds another way. Oh, that's really good. And then Woody rescues him from the garage sale. However, he is coincidentally then found by a crook who steals him and tries to sell him to the museum. This is something readers and audience will accept because they are clever coincidences that lead to the main conflict. Yeah, it's true. That is, without them, it says there wouldn't be a movie. That's true. Because you need that. You need one scene to carry on the other, right? You need that goal, that objective. Same thing in video games. When you're playing in God of War, for example, when I was playing God of War, the player satisfaction is amazing, right? Right down to when the banner comes, when you complete a quest, the banner comes, the sound, the animation. After you complete the quest or beat an enemy, you get a reward. Okay, what's the next one? There's a next something else that you want to do, right? It keeps that going, the next objective, from one to the other. So rule number 20, exercise. This is an exercise, right? Take the building blocks out of a movie you dislike. How do you arrange them into what you would like or do like? This exercise is a reverse to the rule of 10. Being sure about what you do is important, but knowing what to do but knowing what you don't like can be equally useful. So let's have a look. So next time you dislike a movie, you can stand, give another watch, then take it apart rather than just complain about it. Yeah, this is really good. Come up with alternative solutions. Again, learning from people's mistakes. Well, not mistakes to them, but you see them as mistakes. This is really interesting. Right? I think this is good with life as well, not always complaining, right? Instead of complaining about the film, Instead of complaining about the person, what do you want to do about it? Do you want to associate or go away, you know, with someone else, associate with someone else? And films as well, go away, do it how you would like it. Makes sense. Improving your writing skills is all about doing little exercises at first, which we might think are surface level, but in the end, get to the heart of the why we want to write, and consequently what we want to write. Yeah. Okay, so rule number 21, you got to identify with your character situation. You can't just write, cool. What would make your character act that way? This is true. Unless it's part of his character trait, right? To be cool. If you don't, so let's extend on this and see what they elaborate and see. If you don't have a connection to your story, it will be incredibly hard to write from an honest place. Pixar storytelling rule number 20 is a brilliant way to make sure that you are connecting with your characters. This makes them more realistic and makes it easier for the audience to identify. That's true, again, going back to realities of life, right? Living your life, putting the real experiences of your life into work, because people can relate to that. They're familiar with that situation. This is all it comes down to. They're familiar with the situation. And to give you an example here is a technique that comes from Finding Nemo, based on real life events when writer Andrew Stanton had always wanted to make the movie about a fish, but needed a story that he was emotionally connected to. Then one day he went back to the park with his 5-year-old son and spent the whole time imagining all the ways his son could be hurt. He then realized that his overprotectiveness, I get this because I have a 3-year-old daughter too. See, this is what I mean. I get this. I have a daughter now, right? So he's that emotion, which makes sense. You know, I'm a bit overprotective. So it just shows about the fears, you know, and the motives of the character, which makes sense. And I think finally, rule number 22, what's the essence of the story, the most economical telling of it? If you know that, you can build out from there. This is so cool, isn't it? The most economical. Again, going back to the other rules, taking stuff out that's not needed in the scene, or even animation, you know. Do you really need it? Is it getting rid of the story? Is it? And what this is Lord of the Rings, where a lot of the Lord of the Rings fans were angry at Peter Jackson because he left out the Tom Bombadil chapter, right? If anyone's familiar with Lord of the Rings. But to be honest, he was right. It didn't really have no benefit to the story. It was just a random encounter, right, with Frodo and Sam. It wasn't really something that was a catalyst to the story. I mean, I don't see it that way, but obviously you can comment if you disagree, which is fine too, you know, I'm always open to that. So yes, my friends, there we have it, all of the 22, I believe it was 22 rules of animation. I thought just go over them, make a little video of them, and just share my views on it. It's always good to come back to these things. So yes, if you found that useful, or if you think anybody else would find that useful, please like and subscribe and share. You know, it will help, you know, Google, YouTube algorithms. If you like the merch, the t-shirt, there's a link in the description. I've got about 3 or 4 different designs you can check out. I will be updating you on my fitness journey because we are planning with my coach. We're going to do a photo shoot, maybe October time. I have been a bit up and down in my fitness journey, I'll explain. But I'm thinking from now on, I might post a bit more of my fitness stuff. I've done a lot of animation stuff, which is still coming. But to keep me more adhering to the process of my fitness journey, I will post once a week my progress. I will post about how much I've lost, the exercises I'm doing, the update, pictures, everything leading down to the photo shoot, so you can all see it in real time. Any questions on that, you can also check that, write it in the description, write it in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer all of those too. If anyone's thinking of doing fitness as well, you can check out the link in the gamedevfitness.net link in my description, but I'm trying to build a movement in the video gaming industry, because a lot of my friends have kind of encouraged me to do that, who I'm working with, because they saw my transformation and they said, we need something like this in video games. You know, it can get when it comes to the crunch culture, which is still around in video games. You know, a lot of studios are starting to cut down on that, but when the game comes out, there is a lot more overtime and food and unhealthy stuff that we do tend to eat. So anyway, stop rambling. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Happy animating, have fun animating, and go out for a walk and look after your health. See you later.